shows not only is the NDP ahead of Danielle Smith, the new leader of the UCP, but it's even ahead in the city of Calgary, what ought to be the most conservative big city in the country. We're going to talk about that poll, but first we're going to talk about Lorne Gunter's new column that the NDP are hardly the party of ordinary taxpayers and working people, a column that appeared in the Edmonton Sun. Joining us now by Skype is Lorne Gunter. Lorne, I saw your headline. It's NDP hardly the party of ordinary taxpayers and working people. I don't even know if they pretend to be that anymore. I think they're the party of the woke, of the university professors, the environmentalists, of the race critical activists. I don't even know, other than the fact that they get money and donations from the labor unions, I don't think they actually even pretend to be anymore, or am I wrong?
No, I think they pretend to be. I don't think they do anything real to be the party of working people, of ordinary citizens, of ordinary tool pushers. You know, the guys who used to work on the assembly lines, the guys who used to load up their truck in the morning and drive 100, 200 kilometers out into the middle of nowhere to check on a pumping station on an oil pipeline. They don't represent those people at all anymore. And you can see that when they're in power. When the NDP were in power in Alberta from 2015 to 2019, they helped, along with the municipalities and the feds, to grow the percentage of the workforce in Alberta that is public sector from 19%, which is one of the lowest in the country, to about 23 or 24%, which is about average in the country. That's a huge increase. And that was before the pandemic, of course, where no one in the public sector got laid off. And the public sector grew and grew and grew. So I haven't seen the latest figures on what our percentage is now, but it must be approaching 1/4 of all workers in Alberta are public sector. And that's who the NDP represents most. Yeah. It represents teachers, nurses, people in the public sector, the public service in the province, in the federal government, people who want bigger government, who think they're hard done by. It's like the PSAC workers who were recently out on strike and were surprised to find that the general public doesn't think of them as hard done by little working guys. That's the kind of mentality now that the NDP represents.
Yeah, it was incredible to me watching those PSAC strikers when they made their passionate case. It was, hey man, I want to keep working from home, dude. Like, that's your great grievance. We're on the precipice of a recession. Inflation.
I was hardly doing any work at the office. Now I'm at home doing nothing.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to continue doing that.
You know what? Me too, man. Unfortunately, only government bureaucrats get that. But when you're talking about 1/4 of the workforce now in the public sector, that's a built-in base to start from. I mean, I remember growing up in Alberta, the NDP was a fringe party. In many ridings, it would get single digits. In its most successful ridings, it would get in the teens, and it would punch through a few here and there. In recent years, it would win some seats in the capital. But the idea that it would dominate even in Calgary, that's the new Abacus poll. So here's my point. I agree with you that there is a real collegiality between the NDP and the unions. In fact, Rachel Notley's husband, Lou Arab, is a senior executive with the federal
CUPE.
Public. Yeah, CUPE, the federal.
And the AFL, the Alberta Federation of Labor, which represents an awful lot of private sector union types, is huge in the NDP. They are an affiliate member of the NDP.
That would be like having these CEO groups out there, the chambers of commerce. It would be like literally having the council of CEOs as part of the Conservative Party. Like, all you're missing is the top hat and the monocle, and to give those people an official standing. That I think that, it's really iffy from a campaign finance point of view. But let's put that aside. Calgary's supposed to be different. Edmonton's got the big university, big hospitals, big bureaucracy. I get it. Calgary's supposed to be the oil patch, freest city, cowboy spirit, ranching, I'm a free man on the land kind of thing. Yep. But I'm looking at the stats here. In Calgary, the NDP, when you take out, it's leading 42-36. And by the way, when you take out the undecideds, the numbers don't get any better. It looks like it's going to be a blowout in Edmonton. The NDP is more than double.
Yeah, they'll win 20 seats in Edmonton.
And that's not a surprise. But even in rural parts, it's just a single-digit difference. I don't want to put too much stock in just one poll, and I note that Abacus is chaired by Liberal Party partisans. But boy, that's grasping at straws on my part to say, "Oh no, I don't put too much stock."
Well,
in
and
this.
there
I
have
think
been
it's
lots.
real.
Like Post Media had a poll done by Leger that showed the NDP and UCP tied in Calgary about 7 days ago.
Yeah.
Angus Reid had a poll that shows the UCP ahead in Calgary by a substantial, beyond the margin of error. Oh. So you name the outcome you want.
Yeah.
I will find you a pollster that has those results.
Yeah.
But my sense is that increasingly in politics, people vote not for the policies of the party or the perceived position on the ideological spectrum, but for the person who socially seems the most like them.
Yeah.
And I think Danielle Smith looks an awful lot like sort of a wingy type of person, a person who has very extreme views, particularly on COVID. And as a result, doesn't look like me, doesn't feel like me to a lot of voters. Yeah. And Rachel Notley does. And, I'm about to, after we're off the air here, I'm about to sit down and write a column about the NDP's job creation numbers, which were abysmal. Yeah. They're economically, the NDP would be a disaster in Alberta. But Rachel Notley feels like my neighbor lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why people are going to vote for her. And Danielle Smith sounds like a clanging gong in a howling wind, and people aren't cozy to that. Yeah. So a lot of people might hold their noses and vote UCP because they're afraid the NDP will be bad economically. But there are an awful lot of other people who probably had been PC voters before, back during Ralph's time or Lougheed's time, who will simply stay home. Yeah. And if that happens, then you get 100,000, 150,000 of those people staying home. That would make a huge difference for the NDP's chances.
Yeah, interesting, in that Abacus poll, they say that 19% of people who voted for the federal Conservatives would support the provincial NDP. That seems like an impossible duality. Like, how do you do that?
The NDP basically taken the place in Alberta of the Liberal Party. Yeah. The Liberal Party will be lucky if it gets more than 5% of the vote in the provincial election. I would be surprised if it gets 5%. Yeah. The Alberta Party, which is, we're the Liberal Party, but we're too sophisticated to call ourselves a Liberal Party. They are, to me, the Alberta Party is the most pretentious party I have ever seen in provincial politics, because we're above partisan politics. We're too good for partisan jousting. Oh my goodness. And so they just give me heartburn every time I hear anything they have to say, because it is so arrogant. But they might get 4%. The Liberal Party might get 3 or 4%. But by and large, the kind of people who maybe were red Tories in the previous PC regimes, and the people who are liberals in the province, and in most elections, the Liberals would get 8 to 10% of the vote. Those people have now moved, for this election anyway, to the NDP because Smith does not represent who they think they are.
That was an excerpt from the Ezra Levant Show. I'm Ezra Levant. Every weekday, I do a monologue about the topic of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest, either in studio or via Skype. And then I read your mail, whether it's fan mail or hate mail, which is sometimes even more interesting. This is on our premium service, though, called Rebel News Plus. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. It's $8 a month or less if you buy a whole year in advance. You get my show every weeknight, plus Sheila Gunn Reid Show every week. It's called The Gun Show. It's pretty amazing. You know, we rely on you because we do not take a dime from the government. In Canada, that makes us almost unique. So please help us out and help yourself to some great journalism at rebelnewsplus.com.